Jason was an average young man, just trying to make his way in a busy, fast-paced city. He was far from wealthy, barely scraping by as a part-time tech store employee while dreaming of a future in science. The city itself was a beautiful blend of human technology and alien architecture, where humans and aliens lived side by side. But the two races rarely mingled beyond necessary interactions. Jason's life was filled with the everyday routine of work, occasional outings with friends, and quiet evenings at home. When his old roommate had moved out, Jason found himself in a tight spot. Rent was expensive, and he wasn't sure he could afford the apartment on his own. But luck seemed to be on his side when a notice came through for a new roommate. The offer seemed too good to pass up. A discount on rent and the promise of a quiet and respectful living situation. Jason didn't give it much thought. A roommate was a roommate, right? It wasn't until he met Lyra that he realized how unusual this living arrangement was going to be. Lyra was unlike anyone Jason had ever met. She was tall, with striking features that immediately caught his attention, pale, almost iridescent skin, large violet eyes that shimmered like stars, and long silver hair that seemed to move with its own will. She looked like she had stepped right out of a science fiction movie. Her attire was simple, though, like a long, loose-fitting tunic that covered her body but did little to hide her natural grace. She was an alien, of course, a member of a race from a distant galaxy. Jason had never shared an apartment with an alien before. To him, Lyra was a mystery. She didn't speak much, and when she did, her voice was calm and collected, almost hypnotic. She was also incredibly strong. Jason had witnessed it one evening when they were moving some furniture around in the living room. Lyra had picked up a heavy table without breaking a sweat, effortlessly sliding it across the floor. Jason, on the other hand, had struggled to lift it alone, needing her help. He chalked it up to her alien biology, though. After all, most aliens on Earth were known to have physical abilities beyond human limits. But it wasn't just her physical strength that piqued Jason's curiosity. It was the strange aura she gave off. There was a calmness to her, a quiet power that made her seem far older and wiser than she appeared. Jason wasn't sure what it was, but he felt like she was constantly studying him, watching his every move, as if she knew something he didn't. Despite all this, Jason couldn't help but feel a strange connection to Lyra. There were moments when their eyes would meet, and for a fleeting second it felt like they were the only two beings in the universe. It was an unsettling feeling, yet one he couldn't shake. Maybe it was just the loneliness of living in a big city, or maybe there was something about Lyra that made him feel different. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, but there was more to her than just her appearance. Jason knew there was something she wasn't telling him, something deeper than what she let on. For the most part, their interactions were limited. She would occasionally cook a meal in the kitchen, but it was always something unfamiliar, strange. Dishes with flavors Jason had never tasted. He was hesitant to try most of it, but one evening, when he was starving and didn't feel like cooking, he finally gave in. To his surprise, the meal was delicious, unlike anything he had ever eaten. Lyra only smiled at him when he complimented her cooking, but it was the kind of smile that suggested she knew something Jason didn't. As the weeks passed, Jason found himself growing more and more curious about his alien roommate. There was an obvious tension between them, a kind of unspoken understanding that something was brewing beneath the surface. He had no idea what it was yet, but he could feel it. Something was about to change. And that something came one fateful morning when Jason walked into the kitchen to find Lyra staring at a strange, glowing symbol on the wall, her hand extended toward it. It was the moment that would change everything, the moment when Jason realized that his alien roommate was not just an ordinary inhabitant of Earth, and that his life would never be the same again. Jason had never seen Lyra act like this before. That morning, when he walked into the kitchen, he found her staring at the wall, her hand stretched out toward something he couldn't see. The symbol on the wall glowed faintly, a soft, pulsing light that seemed to shimmer and change shape as she focused on it. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes narrowed in concentration. It was as if she were communicating with something, but Jason couldn't tell what it was. "Lyra?" he called, stepping forward slowly. She didn't respond at first. Her eyes were still fixed on the glowing symbol, and her hand hovered inches from the surface of the wall. Jason hesitated, unsure of what to do. He had never seen anything like this before. In the few weeks they'd been roommates, Lyra had always kept to herself, never showing any signs of this kind of power. Suddenly, the symbol flickered, and Lyra's eyes snapped toward him. She lowered her hand and turned to face him, her expression as calm as ever. But there was something different about the way she looked at him now. It was as if she were seeing him for the first time. "Is everything okay?" Jason asked, his voice laced with uncertainty. Lyra didn't answer right away. She just stood there, studying him, as if she were weighing something in her mind. For a moment, Jason thought she might say something, but instead she simply nodded. Her face remained impassive, but Jason could sense that she was hiding something. "I'm fine," she said finally, her voice soft and smooth as always. "I was just communing." "Communing?" Jason echoed, unsure of what that meant. Lyra gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "It's something my people do," she explained, her tone distant. "We connect with the energy of our surroundings, communicate with the life forces around us. It's part of who we are." Jason frowned. He didn't fully understand, but he knew there was more to Lyra than she was letting on. Her calm demeanor and cryptic answers only made him more curious. She wasn't like any alien Jason had heard about in his studies. Most aliens were either diplomats, scientists, or warriors, but Lyra was different. She seemed to carry a weight with her, something hidden just below the surface. For the rest of the day, Jason tried to put the strange event out of his mind. He went about his usual routine: work, errands, a quick dinner at home. But the image of Lyra's hand hovering over the wall stayed with him. There was something about her that felt otherworldly, and it wasn't just her physical appearance. It was the way she seemed to glide through life, the way she moved, the way her presence filled a room. It was as if she didn't belong here, yet somehow Jason hesitated. There were so many questions he wanted to ask, but one stood out above the rest. "Why did you come to Earth? What's your mission here?" For a moment, Lyra didn't answer. Her gaze softened, and she looked down at her hands, as if weighing her response. Jason held his breath, waiting. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I came here to observe, to understand. But my reasons are not as simple as you think." Jason felt a shiver run down his spine. There was more to Lyra's mission than she was telling him. And as he sat there, he realized that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't even begin to imagine. Jason sat in the living room, his mind racing. Lyra's words echoed in his ears. "I came here to observe, to understand. But my reasons are not as simple as you think." She had said it so calmly, as if she were discussing something mundane, but to Jason, it felt like a warning. What was Lyra hiding? And why did she choose him to be her roommate? His curiosity grew by the day. He found himself watching her more closely now, wondering if he could catch a glimpse of something, anything, that might explain her mysterious presence. She wasn't like other aliens he'd heard about. Most came to Earth for trade, diplomacy, or research, but Lyra was different. She kept to herself, never spoke of where she came from, and seemed to exist in a world of her own. Days passed, and things seemed to return to normal. Jason continued his routine, going to work and coming, home in the evenings. But every time he entered the apartment, Lyra was there. quietly sitting in the corner, reading something he couldn't understand, or sometimes staring out the window as if lost in thought. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and when she did, it was always with that same calm, distant tone, but Jason's mind never stopped racing. He began to notice things, small details that stood out more now. For one, Lyra never seemed to eat. Oh, she would cook sometimes, but whenever Jason tried a dish, she would simply smile and watch, never taking a bite. He had asked her once why she didn't eat, but her response had been vague, something about how her kind sustained themselves differently. She never went into detail. One evening, after another long day at work, Jason came home to find the apartment in complete darkness. It was unusual for Lyra to be so quiet, and Jason's curiosity got the best of him. He turned on the light and called out to her. "Lyra?" he asked, his voice breaking the silence. From the shadows of the living room, he saw her move, her silhouette just visible against the dim light. She was standing near the window again, her back turned to him, her head tilted as if she were listening to something. Jason walked over slowly, unsure of what to expect. "You're quiet tonight," he said softly, stepping closer. "What's going on?" Lyra didn't answer at first, and for a moment, Jason thought she might ignore him again. But then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm listening." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Listening to what?" Her eyes met his for the first time in days, and there was something in them that made him feel uneasy. There was a depth to her gaze, like she was seeing something he couldn't. She didn't say anything else, but her eyes lingered on him for a long moment before she turned back to the window. "I'm listening to the energy," she said finally, her voice distant once more. "Everything has a frequency, Jason. People, places, even objects. They all vibrate at different speeds. I listen to those vibrations." Jason wasn't sure how to respond. He had always thought of aliens as beings with advanced technology and knowledge, but this was something else. "You can hear vibrations?" he asked, trying to make sense of it. Lyra nodded, but she didn't explain further. Jason could see that she wasn't going to say more, so he didn't press her. But he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something incredibly important about what she had said. It was as though she was in tune with something far beyond human understanding. That night, Jason lay awake in bed, his thoughts swirling. Was Lyra's mission really just to observe? Or was there something more? He couldn't help but wonder if he was just a pawn in some larger game, unaware of the true stakes. The next day, Jason decided to confront Lyra. He needed answers, and he wasn't going to let it go anymore. When he came home that evening, he found her once again sitting in her usual spot, reading from the strange, glowing device she always carried with her. She barely looked up as he entered. "Lyra," Jason said firmly, stepping into the living room. "I need to know the truth. What are you really here for? What is your mission?" Lyra put the device down and finally met his gaze. There was something different in her expression now, a kind of sadness or maybe regret. For a moment, Jason thought she might tell him everything, but instead, she simply sighed. "I'm here to understand you, Jason," she said softly. "To understand your people. You humans, you are unpredictable. I came here to observe, yes. But I also came to learn. I've been watching you for a reason. And you've been watching me too, haven't you?" Jason froze. He hadn't realized how much he had been studying her, but now that she mentioned it, he couldn't deny it. Every day he had wondered about Lyra's past, her motives, and the strange things she did. He had been drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. "Why?" Jason asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra stood up and moved toward him. She didn't touch him, but her presence was so overwhelming that Jason felt as though he were being pulled into something far deeper than he understood. She looked at him for a long time, her eyes soft and thoughtful. "Because," she said, slowly. "You're more important than you realize, Jason. The future of your world, of my world, is tied to what happens next. And you have a part to play in it." Jason's heart raced. He wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but for the first time he was afraid of what she might say. There was too much at stake now, and he knew that his life, his very understanding of reality, was about to change forever. The next few days felt different. Jason couldn't shake off the feeling that something was happening, something big. Lyra had told him that the future of both their worlds was tied to what happened next. But what did that mean? He had been living a normal life, going to work and coming home each day. But now everything seemed to have changed. Every conversation, every glance felt heavier, like there was more beneath the surface. It wasn't just her words that had unsettled him. It was the way she acted. Lyra had always been calm and collected, but now there was an edge to her. It was subtle. She still moved with the same grace and ease, but Jason could sense that something was different. She was more distant than usual, her mind often seeming far away, like she was thinking about something Jason couldn't understand. One evening, Jason decided to confront her again. He couldn't let this go on. He needed to know what was happening, what Lyra had meant when she said his world and hers were tied together. He had to know what his part in all of this was. "Lyra," Jason said when he walked into the living room. She was sitting by the window again, her eyes staring out at the city lights. She hadn't noticed him come in. "I need to understand," he said firmly, walking toward her. "What did you mean when you said the future of both our worlds is tied to what happens next? What's really going on?" Lyra turned slowly to face him, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of sadness and determination. There was no hesitation in her gaze, as if she had been waiting for him to ask this question. She stood up slowly, walking over to him with a calmness that only made Jason more nervous. The silence between them felt thick, like the air was charged, with something Jason couldn't name. "There's something you need to know about me, Jason," Lyra said softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm not just a refugee. I'm not here just to observe your people. I'm here because I have a mission, and that mission is more important than anything you can imagine." Jason listened intently, his heart beating faster. He wanted to ask what this mission was, but he knew that if he did, it would be the beginning of something much bigger. He wasn't ready for it, but at the same time, he knew that there was no turning back now. Lyra had already brought him this far into her world. "My people, my species, were once rulers of a great empire," she continued, her voice low. "But we were overthrown. A new faction, the Orcs, rose to power. They wiped out many of us, and they are still hunting the survivors. They are relentless, and they will stop at nothing to destroy us." Jason took a step back, stunned. He had no idea what Lyra was saying. "So, you're running from them?" he asked, trying to understand. Lyra nodded. "In a way, yes, but I'm also here for a different reason. I came to Earth because the Orcs are coming here. They're targeting this planet for a reason. They think that Earth holds the key to their victory." Jason's mind raced. "But why Earth? What makes it so important?" "I can't tell you everything," Lyra said, her eyes darkening. "Not yet. But the Orcs have been watching your planet for a long time. They believe your species has a power they can use to control the galaxy, and they will do anything to get it." Jason felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had always thought of humans as simple, not involved in anything larger than their own world. But now, he saw that he was wrong. Earth was part of something much bigger, a galactic struggle, and he had unknowingly stepped into the middle of it. "So, what does this have to do with me?" Jason asked. "Why am I involved in all of this?" Lyra looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing her words carefully. You're part of the equation, Jason. Your role in this is crucial. The Valyrics are searching for something that only humans can help them find. But they're not just after your technology or your resources. They want something more. Jason shook his head, confusion filling his thoughts. I don't understand. Why me? I'm just a guy. I work at a tech store. I don't have anything they'd want. You have more than you realize, Lyra said, her voice almost a whisper. The Valyrics think that humanity has unlocked something hidden in your DNA, something they believe can give them ultimate power. They think that your species holds the key to a weapon that can change the entire universe. Jason stared at her, his mind struggling to keep up. A weapon? He repeated, still trying to make sense of it all. Lyra nodded. Yes, but it's not just any weapon. It's something that could reshape reality itself. And they believe you, Jason, are the key to finding it. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. He felt like the ground beneath him was shifting. But I don't have anything like that, he said, his voice shaky. Lyra stepped closer to him, her expression softening. You do, Jason. Your connection to this world, to your people, it's something the Valyrics can't understand. But I do, and that's why I'm here. I came to protect you, to protect Earth. Jason didn't know what to say. His life had always been simple, ordinary even. But now, everything had changed. He was caught in something bigger than himself, and there was no going back. The Valyrics were coming, and they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. And Jason was somehow at the center of it all. Lyra, I don't know if I can handle all of this, Jason said, his voice strained. I'm just a guy. What do I do now? Lyra's eyes softened. You do what you've always done, Jason. You survive. And when the time comes, you will choose. But for now, we must prepare. Jason nodded, his mind swirling with 1,000 questions. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same. The days following, Lyra's revelation felt like a blur. Jason couldn't shake the weight of her words. He had always seen his life as ordinary, a simple existence with a steady job and the occasional hangout with friends. But now, everything felt different. He had a part to play in something far bigger than he had ever imagined. And as much as he wanted to push the thoughts aside and go back to the life he once knew, he couldn't. The Valyrics were coming, and Earth was in danger. Lyra had been quiet in the days since she shared the truth with him. She had always been distant, but now it seemed like she was hiding something even deeper. She spent most of her time researching, studying something Jason couldn't understand. Every now and then, she would look up from her work, her eyes filled with a distant sadness, as if she were carrying the weight of the entire galaxy on her shoulders. Jason didn't know how to help her, but he knew he had to do something. One evening, after another long day at work, Jason returned to the apartment to find Lyra standing in front of the window, looking out at the city lights. She had a way of making the room feel smaller when she was around, as if her presence took up more space than anyone else's. He couldn't explain it, but it was like she was always watching, always waiting for something. Lyra, Jason said, trying to break the silence. Is there anything I can do? Anything I can help with? She didn't turn around at first, and for a moment, Jason thought she hadn't heard him. But then, she spoke softly, her voice low and measured. You're already helping, Jason, she said, still staring out the window. By being here, by standing by me. That's more than you realize. Jason frowned, unsure of what she meant. But I don't know anything about what's going on. I'm just a guy. I don't even know where to start. Lyra turned slowly, her violet eyes locking onto his. There was a sadness there, but also something else, something that made Jason feel like she was about to reveal something even deeper. "You've already done more than you know," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Your presence here is the reason I'm still standing. The Valerics. They don't just want me. They want everything I represent. But you, Jason, you've become a symbol, a link between humanity and my people. And that makes you more important than you realize." Jason took a step back, his mind reeling. "A symbol? What does that mean?" Lyra looked away for a moment as if she were considering her words carefully. "The Valerics believe that humanity has a unique connection to the universe, something that gives your species an advantage over others. They think that through you, they can unlock that power. And they believe they can use you to control it." Jason felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors about alien races coming to Earth to study humans, but this was different. The Valerics were after something far more dangerous than knowledge. They wanted power, and they believed he was the key to it. "So, what now?" Jason asked, his voice trembling slightly. "What do we do?" Lyra stepped forward, her expression serious. "We fight, but not in the way you think. The Valerics are already here, watching us. They've infiltrated Earth in ways you can't even imagine. But we're not alone. There are others who want to protect this planet, who want to stop the Valerics from taking control." Jason didn't know what to say. He had never been involved in anything like this before. He was just a regular guy with no military training, no special skills. But Lyra was looking at him with such intensity, like she believed in him, and somehow that gave him strength. He wasn't sure how he could help, but he knew that if he didn't try, Earth might not have a chance. "How do we fight them?" Jason asked, his voice firmer now. "What can I do?" Lyra's eyes softened slightly, and for the first time, she seemed to acknowledge the weight of the situation. "You don't have to fight them in the way you think. Your strength doesn't lie in physical power, Jason. It lies in your ability to adapt, to think in ways they can't. That's what makes humans unique. The Valerics are powerful, yes, but they lack the creativity and resourcefulness that humans possess. That's why they fear you." Jason nodded slowly, trying to understand. "So, what do we do next?" "We gather allies," Lyra said, her voice steady again. "We find those who are willing to fight for Earth. I've already made contact with a few, people who can help us take down the Valerics. But we need to be careful. We can't trust everyone. The Valerics are masters of deception." Jason didn't know how Lyra had managed to make contact with these allies, but he trusted her. She had already shown him that she wasn't just some helpless refugee. She was strong, capable, and determined. And now she was asking him to be a part of something much larger than himself. "So, where do we start?" Jason asked, his heart racing with anticipation. Lyra smiled slightly. The first real smile he had seen in days. "We start by preparing. The Valerics won't come in full force just yet. They'll test us, see how we react. We need to be ready." Jason felt a sense of determination rise within him. For the first time since this all started, he felt like he had a purpose. He wasn't just some guy caught in the middle of a war between aliens. He was a part of something bigger, and no matter what it took, he was going to do whatever it took to protect Earth. Jason felt like everything was moving faster than he could process. The days had blurred together as he followed Lyra's plan, helping her reach out to those who might join their cause. He had always considered himself an average person, but now he was caught in the middle of something huge, something that could change the fate of Earth itself. The Valerics were coming, and Jason had a role to play, whether he understood it or not. Lyra had explained more about the Valerics and their plans. They were a ruthless, calculating race. They wanted to control the galaxy, and they believed that humanity held the key to something far beyond the technology Earth possessed. It wasn't just about resources or military power the Valerics wanted. To tap into the potential of human creativity, intelligence, and something Jason couldn't quite understand. Something buried deep within humanity's DNA. Every day, Lyra seemed to be getting more serious, her focus narrowing as she worked, with the small group of allies she had assembled. Jason was part of that group now, but his role was still unclear. Lyra had said that his strength wasn't in physical power or training, but in his ability to think outside the box, to come up with solutions the Valerics couldn't anticipate. But Jason wasn't sure if he was ready for such a responsibility. One evening, after another long meeting with their allies, Jason found himself sitting alone in the living room. The apartment felt unusually quiet. He hadn't seen Lyra for a while. She was always busy, always working on something important. He had grown used to her being the one in charge, the one with all the answers, but tonight, something felt different. He felt a deep sense of uncertainty, a feeling he couldn't shake. As he sat in the silence, his mind began to race. What was he really doing here? Was he truly ready to face the Valerics? Lyra had trained him, shown him some basic tactics, but he knew that none of that would be enough when the Valerics arrived. They were more powerful, more experienced in battle. Could humans really stand a chance? Jason stood up and walked over, to the window looking out at the city. It seemed so peaceful, so unaware of the danger looming on the horizon. He thought about his life before all of this, his simple, ordinary existence. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now, every day was a struggle to prepare for a war he never wanted to fight. He wasn't a soldier, a leader, or a strategist. He was just a guy who had ended up in the middle of an intergalactic conflict. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned around to see Lyra standing in the doorway, watching him with her usual calm gaze. She had a way of entering a room without making a sound, and Jason was always struck by how silently she moved. She seemed almost ethereal, like she wasn't quite part of this world. "Jason," Lyra said, her voice soft yet firm. "You're thinking too much." He gave a small laugh, though it didn't feel genuine. "How can I not? I feel like I'm just stumbling through this. I'm not prepared for any of this." Lyra walked toward him, her eyes steady and unwavering. "None of us are fully prepared for what's coming, but that doesn't mean we can't fight. You have the strength inside you, Jason. I know you do." Jason shook his head. "I don't know if I believe that. I'm not a hero, I'm just me. What if I fail? What if we all fail?" Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch light but firm. "Fear is natural, but you have something the Valerics can't predict. Your humanity. It's your ability to adapt, to think in ways they can't understand, that gives us hope. I trust you, Jason." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Jason hadn't realized it before, but the way she said them made him believe in her trust. Maybe it wasn't about being a soldier or having the perfect plan. Maybe it was about standing up, even when you were scared, and doing what was necessary. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time he saw something else there, a mix of gratitude and something deeper. It was clear that Lyra cared about him, not just as a teammate, but as a person. In that moment, he realized how much they had both been through together. He wasn't alone in this fight. Lyra had trusted him with something important, and now he had to trust himself. "I'll do whatever it takes," Jason said, his voice more steady now. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I'll fight. For Earth. For us." Lyra nodded, her expression softening. "That's all I need from you." The two stood there for a moment, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Jason felt a sense of determination rising in him, replacing the doubt that had been clouding his mind. The fight ahead wouldn't be easy, but he wasn't facing it alone. He had Lyra by his side, and together, they would do whatever it took to protect Earth. As the days passed, Jason found himself more and more involved in the preparations. Lyra and their allies worked tirelessly, setting up defenses, organizing strategies, and training for the inevitable confrontation with the Orcs. Jason did his part, using his creativity and quick thinking to come up with ideas that might give them an edge. It wasn't much, but it was something. And then one evening, as they gathered around a table, their leader, an experienced alien fighter who had joined their cause, looked at Jason and spoke. "We've trained long enough," the leader said. "It's time to take the fight to them. The Orcs won't wait much longer." Jason nodded, his heart pounding. The moment of truth was coming, and there was no turning back. He wasn't sure what would happen in the coming days, but one thing was certain. He was ready to face whatever came. No matter how impossible it seemed, no matter how terrified he felt, he would fight. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting everything he had ever known. The day had come. The moment that Jason had been dreading and preparing for. The Orcs were no longer a distant threat. Something talked about in hushed voices. They were here. Jason could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, as the city held its breath. Every step he took felt like it carried the weight of the world. Lyra was by his side, as she had been through every step of this journey. She had become his anchor, the one person he trusted more than anyone else. She had taught him more than he had ever expected to learn, not just about battle, but about life, strength, and purpose. They had trained, planned, and gathered their allies. Now, all of it would be tested. Jason looked out over the city from the rooftop they had chosen for their final stand. It was eerily quiet, the usual hum of life replaced by an unsettling silence. The streets were empty, the lights dimmed, and people had either hidden or prepared for the inevitable. Jason could see the darkened skyline, the buildings that seemed to stretch on forever. In the distance, he saw the first signs of the Orcs ships descending, sleek and menacing, like shadows falling over the world. "They're here," Jason muttered under his breath. His heart raced, but he tried to steady himself. He had come so far, and now there was no turning back. Lyra stood next to him, her expression unreadable, though her posture was as composed as ever. "They've been coming for a long time," she said quietly. "But we're ready now. We've prepared for this moment." Jason turned to look at her. There was something different about her now, something that made him realize just how much she had changed since they first met. She had always been strong, but now there was a fire in her eyes, a sense of determination that matched his own. She wasn't just an alien with a mission anymore. She was someone who had fought for this planet, fought for Earth, and for him. "I still can't believe it," Jason said, shaking his head. "Just a few months ago, I was living my normal life. Now, we're fighting a war against aliens." Lyra gave him a small smile, though it was tinged with sadness. "You're stronger than you think, Jason. You've been preparing for this your whole life. It's not about being ready for everything. It's about being ready for what matters most." Jason nodded. He could feel it now, the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting for everyone, for Earth, for a future that was no longer guaranteed. The Orcs had underestimated humanity, thinking them weak, thinking they could take this planet without a fight. But they had made a mistake. Jason and his allies were ready to prove them wrong. As the Orcs ships drew closer, Jason turned and looked at the group of people behind him, humans and aliens alike, standing together in the face of a common enemy. They weren't soldiers, not in the traditional sense. They were just ordinary people, like Jason, who had been thrust into this conflict. But they had come together, united by the same goal, to protect their world. The leader of their small army, an alien warrior named Orin, stepped forward and addressed the group. Today, we fight for our homes. We fight for our families. We fight because we have no other choice. The crowd murmured their agreement, the resolve in their faces clear. Jason felt his heart swell with a sense of pride. He had never felt so connected to the people around him. This was what it meant to be human, to stand together even when the odds were against them. Orin turned to Jason. "You're ready, Jason. I can see it in your eyes. You've proven yourself time and time again. Today, you fight for Earth." Jason swallowed hard. He wasn't sure if he was truly ready, but he had no choice. He couldn't back down now, not after everything they had been through. He wasn't alone. Lyra, Orin, and the others were all there with him, and together they would stand against the Valerics. The first wave of Valeric soldiers landed, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The air was thick with tension as the battle began. Jason grabbed his weapon, a simple blaster, and ran with the others into the fray. The Valerics were formidable, their advanced technology and strength making them a fierce opponent. But Jason and his allies had something the Valerics didn't: human ingenuity, resilience, and the will to fight for what mattered. Lyra was at his side, moving with a speed and precision that left Jason in awe. She was a force to be reckoned with, her every movement calculated, every strike powerful. She fought with a determination that was both fierce and graceful, protecting Jason as much as she could. But Jason knew she wasn't just protecting him. She was fighting for the same cause they all were: Earth's survival. The battle raged on, and Jason found himself caught up in the chaos, his heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had never imagined himself in a fight like this, but now that he was here, he realized something important. He wasn't fighting alone. He was fighting for the future, for the people he loved, for the planet he called home. As the Valerics' forces continued to push forward, Jason and his team held their ground, using every bit of strategy and every ounce of strength they had. It wasn't an easy fight, and there were moments when hope seemed lost. But they didn't give up. They couldn't. They knew what was at stake, and then, after hours of battle, it happened. The Valerics began to retreat, slowly at first, but then faster as their forces realized that they couldn't win. The tide of the battle had turned. Jason and his allies had done it. They had fought back the Valerics against all odds. Jason stood in the middle of the battlefield, breathing heavily, his body sore and covered in dirt. The fight was over. For now, Earth was safe. But Jason knew that this was just the beginning. The Valerics would not give up so easily. There would be more battles ahead. But for today, they had won. They had fought for their world, and they had triumphed. Jason turned to Lyra, who stood beside him, her eyes filled with pride and exhaustion. "We did it," he said, his voice shaky but full of relief. Lyra smiled at him, her expression softening. "Yes, we did. They had fought together, and together they had saved Earth. And no matter what the future held, Jason knew one thing for certain. He wasn't alone anymore.